Hello, thank you for joining us. This is our third episode of Panning Leadership. I'm Randy Haas, and tonight we're going to talk about one of the most dreaded words that any employee hears, and that is micromanaging. Just saying the word, conjures up some images and some fears that people have. So why do people micromanage? What are the effects of micromanaging? What is it about the work environment that causes good leaders to micromanage their people? Because not everybody, I guarantee you, nobody starts out thinking, I'm going to be a manager and I'm going to micromanage everybody I see. And then I guarantee you also that most people that do micromanage, I say guarantee, but there's nothing guaranteed, but most people that do micromanage probably don't even realize that they're doing it. And so everybody complains about micromanaging, but have you ever met anybody that admitted to being part of the problem and saying, hey, yes, I'm the one that micromanages? No, you don't hear that. So that's what we're going to talk about today is why do we micromanage? And I'll tell you that you just Google it, and there's tons of articles that you can find out there that talk about micromanaging and why people micromanage and what happens with micromanaging and how much of a problem it is. Here's the thing. It's frustrating, and excuse me for that. It's frustrating. It's demoralizing. It's demotivating. When you micromanage people, unless very, very narrow set of work areas where micromanaging might be appropriate. But when you micromanage people, essentially what you're saying is, I don't trust you. And if we don't have trust, we're not going to get good results. If you can't trust, and I'll just be frank, if you can't trust your employees, maybe you shouldn't have those employees. So if you have an employee that just absolutely can't do the job, and you've done your coaching, you've done your improvement plans, you've worked with them, but you still feel like that in order to get the results out of them that you want, the quality that you want, that you have to always be on top of every little thing that they do, then maybe that job is not for that employee. Maybe there's a different place within your organization that they would fit better. Maybe a different role within your team that they would fit better. Or maybe it's best for them to look for a job elsewhere. Because the bottom line is, you got to trust your employees, especially if you're a knowledge employee or a knowledge employer. And the majority of jobs out there, especially in the IT is all knowledge workers. You're hiring people's skills, you're hiring people's troubleshooting ability, you're hiring people's creativity, their problem-solving skills. You're not hiring their ability to do things rote. That's not what you're hiring when you're hiring a knowledge worker. And I would go on to say that even at the entry-level jobs, the typical entry-level jobs like fast food, things like that, you're going to want to be able to trust those employees. You're going to be able to walk away. Here's the thing, as a manager, if you can't trust your people, if you can't walk away, then man, you're tied down. You're a slave to your own culture. You're a slave to your own deal. You'll never get a moment's rest because you're always worried about everything that there is out there. So it's a serious problem, and you need to learn to recognize when you're the one doing the micromanaging. You need to be open to feedback. If your people are complaining, then instead of going back and complaining back, take a step back. That's one of the definitions that we picked for this podcast, panning leadership, to be critical of leadership. And I think that's one of the first things that any leader needs to be able to do is be critical of themselves from a constructive standpoint, not from a tear myself down, I'm not good enough standpoint, but from a constructive standpoint. So yeah, you leave yourself a slave to your own processes. And I'll tell you, as a manager, as a leader, I want to be able to take vacations. There was a place that I worked where I managed a team. It was a fantastic team. Love that team. I was on vacation. We went to Disney World, my family and I. It was the second time we'd ever been. We were all excited about it, but I drove straight through because I got a large family and it cost too much to fly. So we drove straight through from Oklahoma City to Orlando, Florida. Get there, get up, get ready to go to Disney World, and I get a notification that someone had been working in the data center and caused an outage. They made a mistake, caused an outage, shut down the whole data center. And so, man, it was crisis mode. My team performed admirably. I didn't have to worry about them at all. It was difficult to let go and to go enjoy the vacation. But I was several states away. There wasn't anything directly that I could do to organize it. And when I got back, I got some fantastic reports from my team leads, people just raving about how they had handled themselves in that situation. But if I had been on the phone with them every 5 seconds saying, give me a status report, let me know how it's going, tell me what's going on, you need to call this person, you need to do this, you need to call this person and do this, I would have completely killed their ability to shine on their own and their ability to get that work done and perform that way. So, I would have stunted their growth as an individual. I would have dampened their leadership chances and their abilities to grow as a person. And B, I wouldn't have enjoyed my vacation. My kids wouldn't have enjoyed the vacation. They would have been, going, well, we drove all the way to Florida and we're all out at Disney World and Dad's sitting back in the hotel room not being a part of the family. And that's not what I want. And I don't think any of you listening want that either. I think you want to be able to enjoy your life. And so it's important not to micromanage, not to do that. It's important to have that balance of knowing when it's appropriate to check in and set parameters. And one of the key things is set those parameters. Let your people know, hey, if there's a crisis situation, you need to let me know what's going on as soon as you know about it. You need to let me know what you plan to do about it and how you're handling it. And then at this number of frequency intervals, ping me and give me an update. Otherwise, I'm just going to back up and let you handle it. And that's scary as a manager. That's scary as a leader. But that's your job as a leader, is to let people do their work. Your job is to help get out of the way and get other people out of the way so that the people you hired to perform the job can get it done. One of the things that happens a lot of times that leads into this micromanagement trap is people are promoted to manager because of their skills and the things that they've done as an operational person or as a technical person. They were a fantastic programmer. They were a fantastic troubleshooter. They were a great writer or a great researcher or a great teacher or whatever. And so they're promoted from a functional role to a leadership role, a managerial role, but often not necessarily trained on what it means to be a leader versus being an operational or functional person. And so the natural tendency is to go about doing what you were doing before. And that means if I was a programmer before, then I'm going to be programming. And instead of developing my programmers and helping to set strategy and helping to set a path and a goal for them to develop as people, then I'm taking away their opportunity by continuing to do it myself. And I'm also taking away my opportunity to grow as a leader at the same time. So here are some signs, according to a Harvard Business Review article, that you may be the micromanager. Number one, you're never quite satisfied with deliverables. Number two, you often feel frustrated because you would have gone about the task differently. You laser in on details and take great pride and or pain in making corrections. You constantly want to know where all your team members are and what they are working on. You ask for frequent updates on where things stand, and you prefer to be CC'd on all emails. Now, all of those things sound like they're okay things for a manager to do. It's okay to not be satisfied with deliverables. That's part of your job, is actually, we want to make people better. That's part of leading, is to help people discover how to be a better version of themselves on a daily basis. And so, yeah, it's okay to not be satisfied with deliverables, but if you set an impossible standard, well, then all you do is demoralize your people. You don't actually get any productivity increases out of them. You don't actually help them to develop. You often feel frustrated because you would have gone about the task differently. Well, here's the thing. There's only one of you. There will always, ever, only be one of you. If you're going to lead a team, you have to recognize that team is made up of different people, different skill sets, different personalities, and that is the power of the team. That is the entire reason to have a team full of people, is to use all of that experience and background and diverse educations and diverse life experiences to solve problems together. And so you gotta step back and be okay with letting people do things a way that you don't. And that's painful and that is uncomfortable, but that's where you grow. When you step outside of that comfort zone, that's where you grow as a person. That's where you grow as a leader. So you laser in on the details and take great pride or pain in making corrections. There's a time or place to make exacting pride in taking things. Like if you're an auditor, or you're preparing documents that are going to be audited, then you need to be exacting with what you're doing. If you're not working on an audit, then you need to make sure that you take more pleasure in letting people grow in what they do than in pointing out where they're wrong. Because if you constantly point out where people are wrong again, it's just demoralizing. It brings productivity down. People want to leave. If you have high turnover in your department, maybe it's you. That's something you've got to ask yourself. And, maybe, I promise, I'm not trying to pick on anybody in particular here. You may feel like it, and I apologize, but that's part of the purpose of this podcast, frankly, is to help bring some of these things to light that you may not think of, that you may not understand. But anyways, all of these things, they are really, hurt the team. They hurt growth. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. So what's at the root of micromanaging? The root of micromanaging is the emotion of fear in a lot of cases. It's fear. Fear of failure. If people don't do things the way I do them, then it's not going to be good enough for my boss. Obviously, my boss likes what I do because they promoted me or they hired me into this role. So they like the way I do things. And so you got this fear that if it's not exactly this way, then it's not going to be good enough. You got this fear that if there's mistakes, it's not going to measure up. And let me tell you, if you create a culture in your company from the top to the very bottom where people are afraid to make mistakes, then you are creating a culture of bankruptcy in the company. That's what it's going to, moral bankruptcy, morale, not moral, but morale bankruptcy, where people come in, they're punching in for a paycheck. If you've got to pay the most salary in an industry in order to retain people, basically pay them so much that they couldn't afford to leave because they couldn't take a job somewhere else, you're not getting the optimal results, really. Because, the old saying is money's not everything. Money's a lot. Money's the reason people are working for you. For one, so you do have to pay your people well, but if that's the only thing you're relying on to motivate people, then you're not going to get good performance out of them. You need to have people, believe. You need to be able to give them something to believe in, some reason to perform, and then you need to give them room to do, room to be, room to grow. So you've got to have the courage to let go. And like I said, that's scary. I understand completely. It wasn't comfortable being at Disney World and knowing that the network was down back home. I had those fears going on in my head. What is my boss going to think? I leave town and I'm not there to handle a crisis. What's the CIO going to think? What's the CEO going to think? Well, my team is going to shine without me, and maybe my boss is going to go, wow, his team is better than he is. Maybe I should get rid of him and promote his team member over him. But the truth is, That's not normally the way things work. Um, you know, if your team can't function without you, then I think you've got a problem. And hey, I'd like to hear your opinion about it. Um, disagree with me, give me comments. Our email address is panning@sharpstonegroup.com. That's panning, Panning, at sharpstonegroup.com. Love to hear from you. If you disagree with anything I'm saying or you have something to add to it, love to hear from you. And hey, if you want to have a great discussion, a dialogue back and forth, I'd love to bring you on the podcast and go back and forth. Over it. You got to have the courage to delegate. Hey, if you don't delegate, you are going to burn out. You know, if you can't go on vacation and your team perform while you're gone, you're going to burn out. You're going to hate your job, and you're going to let yourself down. You're going to let everybody else that's working for you down. You're going to let the people that employ you down. If you burn out because you don't delegate, then that you've killed not just your opportunities, but all these other people's opportunities as well. So it's a serious thing. You've got to be able to delegate. And if they make a mistake, you got to be able to be constructive about your criticism with people. If you really want them to work for you, man, if you can be that manager, that leader that yells and is snarky and makes fun of people and prods people, and you can take great pride in that, man, my people fear me. When I walk in the room, they snap to attention and everything like that. If you're not in the military and people feel like they have to snap to attention when you walk into the room, that could be a sign of a serious culture issue. I think that people should respect. I definitely think that there should be respect and that people should respect authority. But you shouldn't have to be an authoritarian leader. You should not have to wield the power that comes with your position. In other words, how many times have you ever heard somebody say, whose name is on that paycheck? Whose name's on the signature line of that paycheck? If it comes down to you have to wield that in order to get where you're going, where you want people to go, well, that's a serious issue. It shouldn't come down to that. Leadership is influence. Bottom line, leadership is influencing other people. I'm not talking about managing. There's a difference between managing people and leading people. You want to be a good manager, but you want to be a great leader. And a great leader grows himself or herself and their people. So you got to be able to delegate. You got to let other people make mistakes. You got to let other people grow. You've got to let other people do things that are different than the way you do them. Otherwise, why do you have other people? If you want everybody to do everything that you do, you want to have other people. So, the other thing about micromanaging, and I'll wrap up because this is getting to be a little bit longer than what I'm trying to make these into bite-sized chunks. The other thing that causes an issue as far as micromanagement goes is it creates a circle. It creates a vicious circle where you hover over the employee and you make your employee nervous. They're walking on eggshells around you, so they make mistakes. And then you hover closer. You create, you get more micromanage. You get more in their face. And then they make more mistakes. They make more mistakes. They perform even worse. And then you hover closer. You dig in even further. And then they make more mistakes. And then eventually one of you leaves. You let somebody go, or you get frustrated and you leave, or your boss gets frustrated with your lack of being able to get performance out of your people, and they let you go. And it's a very real problem. So it creates this cycle, and you want the other cycle. You want there to be the other side of that where you give a little bit of freedom and the employee makes a few mistakes but does some things good, and you praise those things that are good, and you help them to look at their mistakes and learn from their mistakes. You create an environment where people can learn from the failures that go on, because failures are going to happen. And then You give them a little bit more room and they perform a little bit better. And then you give them a little bit more room and they perform a little bit better. Because here's the bottom line. As a leader, if you want to move up, you've got to have people that you can bring in to replace you. If you've made yourself indispensable in the position you're in other words, nobody could see anybody but you being the leader of that team, because unless you're in the seat, those people don't perform, then you're stuck. You've reached the top of where you're at. So you've got to develop people that can take over for you. In order to be able to move up and move around, you've got to develop people that that can take over for you, that can work for you, so that people can see, man, you bring this person in, you give them a team of people, and those people perform amazingly. Their performance goes through the roof. So they're going to want to give you more and more teams. Now, of course, not everything in the real world maps to that where it's all fair. Of course, there's not fairness in the world. It's just not going to happen. But results get results. And if you stunt the results by taking away the creativity, by taking away the independence, by taking away the diversity of experiences and backgrounds and thoughts and behaviors, if you take those things out of a team and try to stamp everybody in your team into your image, then your results are never really going to get better. In fact, odds are they get worse. So, again, Google micromanagement. Everybody hates it. No, you're not going to find anybody that just says, I love micromanaging. Even people whose personalities is such that they want to be given a very narrow set of directives don't want you sitting at their table doing those things with you and watching that. There's some warning signs out there. Some of the things that it leads to, and this will be kind of wrapping it up. One of the things that's a big trait of micromanagers is an obsession with thinking that people are constantly wasting time and resources. There are some people that just aren't good workers. I'm just going to, some people just don't have the motivation. Some people don't have pride in themselves and pride in their work, and they're not great workers. But I think everybody can be developed. It just depends on how much time you put into them and then having the right environment. And so you've got to trust your people in order for them to trust you. And they have to trust you in order for you to be an influencer and a leader. You can also get just meeting overflow from micromanaging, where you're calling meetings all the time. And if you can't be the person that lets your people do things, if you're the kind of person that when your people do things and then they come to you after they've done them and say, here's what we've done, it was really successful, that your first reaction is to cut them down a peg because they dared to take action without your involvement, then that's a danger zone to be in. So I don't want anybody to be in that danger zone. I really want people to be out there passionate about developing other people. I think that's how you make the workplace better. That's how you make people better. That's how you get better products. Let's face it, the tools that are out there are available to everybody. There isn't a tool out there that is unique to a job, hardly. There are some intellectual property and some private information that gives you an edge, a competitive edge, but the majority of what differentiates you from a competitor is your people. And if you're that leader that develops people, that makes people better leaders, that gives people the reins to problem solve, that casts that vision, that really gets people motivated and enthralled in what they do, and they trust you to lead them, you have a competitive advantage that no one else can duplicate, because your people are unique and they're your best resource. So again, let me know what you think. Panning@sharpstonegroup.com. That's panning@sharpstonegroup.com. Send me a message. You can get us on Facebook, sharpstonegroup.com on Facebook. I'll post my LinkedIn information. Send me a message there. We're going to create some more social media accounts. Honestly, if someone wants to help with that, just let me know, because I'm not the biggest on that. But let's get involved. Let me know. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Give me some stories. Have you had a really bad micromanager? Have you ever had a leader that was a bad micromanager that learned how to not be? And it'd be interesting for me to hear, as they transition from being a micromanaging leader to being a non-micromanaging leader, how that changed the group. So again, hey, thank you for joining us. This is our 3rd episode. We'll have episodes every Monday. That's what we'll shoot for. This one was a little bit late, but subscribe, like, share it with your friends, send us feedback, and join us next week. We've got a couple other podcasts as well. We've got Service Sharp. So if you're a developer, if you're in the ServiceNow industry, if you're running ServiceNow, go check that out. It's a Service Sharp. And then we're also kicking up one in the next week or two about being an entrepreneur, about starting. And I've started a few businesses, but I've worked with people that have started multiple businesses. And one of the great things about having consulted for a long time is getting to see how a bunch of different businesses run. So I want to bring that in, because I know that a lot of people out there, they want to, the dream is to be your own boss. And it's different than what you think. And there's a lot of things to think about. I want to bring that in and bring that experience, and hopefully enable some of you to make your dreams or to take another step toward making them a reality. It's up to you to make them a reality. We're just wanting to pass along some gotchas, some do's, some don'ts, some, things that we fell on our faces doing that maybe you can avoid doing that. So anyways, thank you very much. This is Randy Haas, Panning Leadership. www.sharpstonegroup.com is my company. And have a great week. We'll see you next Monday.